Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, let's let Jane in. Okay, just letting everybody. All right, Jane. Let me see where you are. There you are. Okay. Jane, co-host, and then do this. I do this every time, Jane. Everyone knows I do this every time.
Right,
No.
then. Been with me before is used to seeing up my nose as I do this. I'm like, what? What's happening there?
There we go. All right. I'm going to pin you and then I'll pin me. Perfect. Oh, three more people. All right. Okay. Wonderful. I'm going to try to do this one without my glasses.
Hello. I do look better, slightly pixelated. So
I
that
was
soft
just
light.
thinking how beautiful your skin looks today, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Glowing. Absolutely glowing.
It's 7 a.m. and it's coffee. That's all I can say. Yeah. It's the inner glow of caffeine.
Well, at least you didn't have an issue with your chia seed pudding this morning, so you're good.
Worse than a chia seed issue, Christine. I mean, to start with that,
You
it's
know,
a
nothing in my teeth, so we're good. I'm just gonna close this door real fast.
Sure.
So it's gonna be in the 90s here. So already I'm a little dewy. So we will see how long I can go without turning on the air conditioning. Uh, okay.
We have a frost here, so it's the other end of the spectrum.
Really?
Yes,
Is it-
I know. There's a whole southern hemisphere. I just feel like I need to alert people to that, that sometimes things happen like at the bottom of the world as well.
No, it's just beautiful down there, right? That's all. It's just
It
beautiful.
is,
And
yeah, we're all in hiding at the moment.
yeah.
When we look-
Lord of the Rings, little fairies running around. I get it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, I am so excited about this conversation because, one a lot of people here might know, but one of my favorite two books that I recommend to everyone is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield and Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I feel like they are the same book told through two completely different perspectives. And what I love about both of them is the idea that we are all creative. Everything we do is creative. We are creators. And so many of us may have had an experience as a child or a young person where we were being creative and we got judged. Some negative event came out of that, and we shut off that side of us. Or, like James pointed out, creativity becomes this thing that we maybe play around with if we've got the time, but it's not what adults do. Adults get to work and they make money and they run the house and they do things, but this is something you do with your extra time, with your spare time. And it's just so not true. It's Our lives are built on creativity. we don't build a life to include creativity. It is creativity. So I guess I should probably introduce Jane and let you all know who she is, though I imagine a lot of people here already do know who you are, Jane. But just for, the few that might not have yet been able to meet you, I'm gonna read your bio here. So
Oh,
yes,
I'll
I
just
am.
I'll clench silently
Just
behind the
read
scenes, you know.
through it. Read through
It's
it, okay?
yes.
So Jane is a writer, poet, and horsewoman from the South Island of New Zealand. In the horse world, her work focuses on practices and understandings that increase vitality for both humans and horses, incorporating nervous system awareness to both mindset and movement. The methods she teaches explore physical and emotional patterns at their most foundational level, the brain and the nervous system, with the aim of creating adaptability and responsiveness both in and out of the saddle. Jane has featured and written for various magazines around the world and is a sought after international clinician and trainer through her business Confident Rider. You stop it. Now, Jane's
Everyone wants me.
Jane's passions and expertise also extend to how we can best live full and creative lives and develop the tenacity and courage to do so. Her deep appreciation for writing and the arts has also seen her skip down the garden path, and I so see you in my mind's eye skipping down the garden path of how it is.
Literal statement. Yeah.
Exactly, of how it is we can all find and allow for our own unique creative expression, sharing her own writings and teachings, and doing retreats and workshops that focus on giving ourselves permission to and making the time for following the things that we love. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Thank
do.
you.
So I was I was really excited to meet Jane Pike today.
She does sound great. Like I have to admit that I'd be really keen to meet her as well. So you made me laugh because my little boy Flynn yesterday, the homeschooling group that we're a part of are doing a series of like career interviews with different people, and they invited me in to speak. And Flynn was like, "I'll finally get to find out what you do, Mum." So when you like said that you already know me, I was like, "Well, maybe not," because my own family doesn't seem to know. And I was listed under the banner of horse psychology. So I thought, well, okay, there we go. There's a new job term that I haven't had before that I'll have to live up to in some way.
I just imagine like a big poster of a horse on a couch and you
Me
with a
too. Yeah. I was like, is that the impression? All right. Interesting.
well, this morning I wanted to share a quote that I thought would kind of encapsulate a bit of what I was hoping we would be talking about today. And it was by Elizabeth Gilbert. And it says, a creative life is an amplified life. It's a bigger life, a happier life, an expanded life, and a hell of a lot more interesting life.
Yes.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what was the impetus for you to start valuing and uplifting your creativity, because everything, I mean, your business is so incredibly creative, even the way you use your work with the body, with horses, with people, but it went towards art and creation for creation's sake alone. And how has that changed the way you see your life?
So there's a
A
couple
little
of
question, Jane, just a
yeah,
little
yeah, no, it's a fabulous
light to
question.
get you,
It's
warmed
a
up.
fabulous question. So there's a couple of parallel threads to talk about, and I think that um, they all came because of. Let me collect my thoughts. It's early in the morning. Okay, we're starting now. So I've always been someone that was writing and making for as long as I can remember. But I've also been someone that was a very excellent people pleaser and a talented perfectionist and someone who really liked to get it right. And so, in the household that I grew up in, where there was a lot of different competing forces involved to different mental health issues and anxieties and fluctuations in, the sort of energetic experience of the household, that wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a product of unwellness. My dial flipped to being more in survival mode, I guess, and also making sure that I was controlling the environment as much as possible to make it okay for other people. So I got very good at sort of curating things myself, things around me to match what was needed in the moment so that people felt as stable and as okay as possible. And I was also a very good student. So once I got into the school system, I got very clever at figuring out what was wanted from me and delivering on that promise. For instance, at high school, to give you an extreme example, the scholarship that I needed to get to university, we had a point system, and I needed to get 98 out of 100 to get that scholarship, which meant that I needed to get perfect score in 4 out of 5 subjects. We got like 20, a score of 20 for each of those subjects. And so for each of them, I predicted what I thought the exam questions would be, and I rewrote the essays beforehand, and I memorized them, and I regurgitated them in the essays, and I got 99 out of 100. So I was good at that, I was good at like working the system. But that left me in a position after school of complete fragmentation, actually, because once I stepped outside of a boundary of a container that was holding me, got into this program that was a law communications degree, which I just snort to think of me as like a lawyer. Um, and pretty soon, pretty quickly on, realized that this was a nightmare. Like I didn't want to be doing this, and my whole world fell apart. Like I had this little Mitsubishi Colt that I drove literally 3 days across Australia to get back home after pulling out of university, and I didn't know what to do with myself because my entire experience had been channeled towards getting this outcome, getting into this course. And when that blew apart, I didn't actually know myself at all because I'd just been fitting into boxes. And at that stage, I mean, I laugh now when I think about we'd go to the careers advisor and they'd be like, well, you can be a nurse or a lawyer, or like it wasn't that long ago still. And we were being channeled into these highly predictable states of, possibility, and based on like a multiple choice questionnaire or like what they thought when they looked at you. And the thought then, the internet, I mean, we had those big clunky computers, it was only just coming into being. So this idea of sort of creating your own experience wasn't quite around yet. Um, and so I dissolved. Like I did a lot of outwardly amazing things. I think like when I look at the travels and the aid work, and sometimes I don't recognize myself, but I was very unhappy in the midst of that. I felt um, like I was a bit lost. And what I understand about myself now is that I do have a huge generative energy inside me. And when that isn't channeled into constructive purpose, it turns on itself. And this lends me to the sort of second piece. Um, my mum has struggled her whole life for a variety of different reasons, understandable reasons, with fairly severe mental health issues. And when I reflect back on the bits I do know about her early childhood, and the various blocks that were put in her way, I can see that my vision of her, and I've always held this even when she was kind of unwell, was like her nervous system extends outside of her body. She's a very sensitive person. And I imagine these tendrils kind of moving into the environment. And we have a passion flower vine that I grew up with on my house, and it has those little like really tight little tendrils. Like that's how I imagine people's nervous systems to be, and they kind of like shoot out of their body into the environment. And when they're met with something that that stings them, that opposes them. There's kind of like a retraction, and you sort of ping back in on themselves. And we cope with a certain amount of that just as a product of being alive. But I think when we're repetitively rebuffed, when our creative instincts and the way that we want to be in the world is denied, 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 they start to actually turn in on themselves. And there's a toxicity to that that is created that again has a huge generative energy. And when that energy isn't channeled into productive purpose, it turns toxic, I believe. And this is a very sort of a subjective interpretation of some of the ways that I've come to understand emotional instability when it's not working for us. Um, and so when we talk about creativity and a creative life, we're not talking about like doing something extra. We're talking about the mobilization of our life force. And we're talking about this natural, innate desire that all of us have to create. And if we don't feel that, it's not our fault. It's because what we're responding to is something that we've been given, not something that is innate. And so when people say, oh, I'm not creative or I'm not this, that, or the other, all they're telling me is what they've learned. They're not showing me who they are. Those are two completely different things. And I'm very empathetic to that. So when I was doing all of my nervous system work, creativity didn't really feature as much of it does in certain pockets, like you hear of art therapy and sandbox therapy, and there are different like ways that it's been brought in as like this nice added extra often. That's how it's kind of thought of. But the way that I really think of creating is as the often missing piece to what is essential if we want to use sort of common vernacular to nervous system regulation, because a vital human is a human that wants to be mobilizing their imagination, that has imagination for both positive and negative possibility, and is actioning that in some way towards things that nourish them. And so I have more to say, but I'm afraid that I'm kind of like rabbiting on a little bit. So let me know if it's yeah. Should I keep going? I have like a personal story with this as well. Um, so as that became more and more clear to me, I think the other thing that happened was that to say that I outgrew a trauma story is probably incorrect because I'm still so happy to help everyone with where they're at. But I outgrew my own trauma story. I outgrew my own stuff in a lot of ways. And I became disinterested in myself in nervous system conversations that were focusing on the same things, because that's absolutely where I started. But I think when we talk about the body and the nervous system, a lot of it sort of centralizes and ends on how to manage and or get over these survival situations. It doesn't then move into, well, what's on the other side of the wardrobe? Like, what do we walk through? What's the door that we're walking through? Because that's the beginning. It's not the end. Like, just to feel better, to be able to manage a traumatic experience is not the be all and end all. The other side of that is like, that's the now you're in this imagined wonderland. Now what are you going to do? And I think that's the big stage of expansion that we talk about, where we want to do all of these things to meet the patterns that are limiting us, but actually what we want is to be able to increase our capacity for the unknown, and to increase our capacity for infinite imagined possibility. And that's creativity. If you can hold that space, that's creativity. And that's why we grow the edges of our skin bigger, to be able to hold that. Um, so on my personal journey for it, I think that what I did, which you mentioned really beautifully at the beginning, was that my whole career is built off writing. I mean, I started as a blog, and I was in like the golden age of Facebook when everyone was nice and we liked Mark Zuckerberg. Um, way back when that was when people were painting his portrait and hanging it above their mantelpiece. Uh, we that was me on Facebook, and I just wrote. I wrote because it interested me. I wrote because I was going a little bit bonkers. Also, it was around the time my first child was born, and I live somewhere isolated and I just don't do well as someone that doesn't have my own thing going on. And people were curiously interested in what I had to say. And I think that that's where something that had always been creative for me, which was writing, became something that served a productive purpose. And then it gradually became more and more. I'm loath to say work oriented because I don't have very big divisions between who I am in work and like it's just all me. But like in terms of like instructional, it became more how can I help oriented rather than a product of just my imagination.
Mhm.
And so that was where things went for quite a long time. And necessarily so, in order to get things off the ground, sometimes we bring different parts of ourselves forward. Um, but a couple of things happened. I started to introduce more creative work into my horsing um, world to mixed response because when you offer a creative exercise, interestingly, the binary always comes up, and I'm sure this is familiar to lots of people here. If I ask you to draw, you'll instantly go, I can or I can't. Like there's no in between. You're like, I don't draw. Like, no. And you'll have like an actual physical experience or writing or anything involved to creating has a very tick box answer. You don't need the paragraph where you can fill in your own bit. You can tick the box. You either do it or you don't do it. You can or you can't. And
I was just gonna,
so
I was just gonna add, it reminds me of when Brene Brown talked about doing research around around connection and being vulnerable. And she said, you ask people about love and they tell you about loss.
yes, yeah,
You
yeah,
ask people about joy and they'll tell you about pain.
yeah,
It
yeah,
sounds so familiar. You ask people to write, they'll tell you about, let me tell you about how
yeah,
I'm good at writing right away.
yeah, exactly. So it's an amazing way, like, because the art or the creating wasn't the point, actually. The point was what gets in the way of that, because that's something that's coming up everywhere for you, even if you're not necessarily aware of it. And the worst thing that can happen right here is you're going to produce a crappy drawing. Like that's actually the worst thing. And we don't let ourselves even do that. So it's interesting to see how these limitations come up that are real felt experiences and real can be really emotional. And whether we give ourselves the grace of being able to learn, to be able to like move through them and to recognize that it's possible to have a different conversation with ourselves. Um, as part of that as well, I was sort of teaching more retreats that were had a creative leaning to them. And I started to write my own stuff within those retreats. So even though I was leading them, I was like, oh, I really was writing poetry again. And I thought, I really want to get back into this. And then in the last sort of 18 months, and I think this is true for so many people, I mean, the last 5 years have been such a cluster of like weirdness and just general world bizarreness. And I had a really, really hard time last year. And I found myself getting into a space that I hadn't been in for the longest time of anxiety and I could really easily talk myself into a kind of panic, I guess, about like this, that, and the other. And business was hard, like everything just felt really hard. And so I decided that what I would do was, and I can't even really tell you where this came from, and I don't mean for this to be like mystical or magical, but I think that it is at the same time. I thought, you know what, I'm going to draw. And that I cannot tell you what a random thought that is. Like I was one of those people that was like, I definitely can't draw. Like, nope, 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 nope. Like I would love to, love it, love what looking at art, love art, surround myself with it. But definitely can't do that. And so I had an idea that I wanted to write a book about and it's sort of in progress, The Birds of New Zealand. And I thought maybe I could illustrate it because I'd read a couple of books where people had added these little ink drawings to the book, and I loved them, and I thought, I wonder if I could learn to do that. And so I started to do it, and I really think, well, I know that the reason that I let myself continue was because of all the nervous system work that I'd done. I now could hold the space for all of the things that told me that I couldn't, and separate out the emotion from the action. I could let myself have the experience of practicing. And the one thing I started, which has changed my life, and I think is actually where any book I write is heading, was I started something that I have called my Book of Allies. And it was to consider that if I was feeling lonely, and if I was feeling anxious, and if I was considering afraid, that, and I talked about this in my summit talk in Birmingham, that maybe I was just looking in the wrong place. Maybe it was a state of misattention. And so instead of getting on the computer first thing in the morning, I started to draw whatever kind of appeared to me. And what I don't mean like I had an apparition. Like if I read a book, or if I was moved by something, I would think, okay, I'm going to draw that next. That would be that's my totem. I'm going to draw them next. And the thing about anxiety is what I learned experientially, and what I've sort of understood since, is that the opposite of it is not confidence, it's actually creativity. When you're not anxious, you create, you make. And if you purposely put yourself in that place, you shrink the anxiety. And that's what happened. I kept purposely putting myself in that place. And I work a lot with brain mapping from a body perspective and from a neurological perspective. And this is kind of a metaphor of that. But I had a really big map for anxiety in my brain at that moment in time. And I'm actually a very good anxious person. If anyone needs training in that, I can teach you how to be anxious in 5 easy steps. Maybe like only a couple, actually. I'm very good at being anxious. And I've had a lot of training, 45 years actually. And so, speak to me after if you want some help. But I think the real estate in my brain that was dedicated to being anxious was like New York. And so there was a lot more real estate to that emotion present than any other emotion. And when I started to create, the creating real estate started to take over, and it shrunk New York. It shrunk the anxiety. And I made a different map. And I started to crave creating, and I started to, there was a self-propulsive element to it, in that what I created started to look less shitty. Felt good. Because like it's nice. I think that I've talked about this in the creative group as well, in that like we focus a lot on creative process, but it's also okay to want to master something. It's also okay to have like an outcome for something. It just means you have to give yourself the kind of wherewithal to be able to get there. And so when that happened, it just started to feed on itself. And now, honestly, I could sit and draw all day. Like literally, if you gave me one choice to do, I would just draw all day. And that even 14 months ago I would have just snorted my tea out my nose if you told me that. That's like, it's never going to happen. So that was a very, very long answer to one question.
No, but that was the story that I was kind of alluding to when I posted about you being on, and that there was a story that I hoped to share, which was this idea that you couldn't draw. And then, so quickly, you were sharing with me these drawings of birds that were just really, really beautiful. And your skill just developed so quickly. And it was just really like bananas to go, who told you you couldn't draw? Like, where did that come from? Because clearly that skill has just been dormant, waiting for the opportunity for you to put that pencil in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that, like you said, like it's not that I don't want to give anybody the idea that you have to be really good at something to continue. I mean, some of the most successful people, let's take the Dave Matthews Band. If anybody's heard of them,
Mm-hmm.
they are one of the biggest, um, the most successful money-making bands in the world. And if you ever hear them tell their story, they were intolerable in the beginning. They would practice in the garage at like somebody's parents' house, and the neighbors would go, please, can you shut up? It is so, people would tell them, like, it was awful, but they persisted and
Mhm.
they got better and they got better. So, and sometimes it's just the idea of activating that side of your brain. And, you know, you talked a lot about anxiety, and I had been doing a little bit of like, I wanted to do a little research before our talk because
Jane Pike, anxious.
yeah,
Yes.
go.
Tell you all those
But
references.
I did find, so I'm not going to read all this, but I'll just give you, so creativity is linked with increased positive mood, joy, happiness, optimism, reduces stress, lowers cortisol levels, promotes mindfulness, you know, going into a flow state, which, if, you know, if we've ever been in a flow state is just that idea of when you're doing something and you're so engrossed in what you're doing that you lose all track of time. And all of a sudden you look up and it's been 4 hours and you don't know where the time went. It even helps with trauma processing because I think of it in the same way. If you ever heard, oh, who is it? I don't know if I'm going to attach this to the wrong person because it could have been Edison or it could have been Einstein. But they talked about how they would get all of their big ideas when they were fishing. Like they would go fishing because having your brain focus on something else while all the little cogs and wheels are turning in the background trying to solve the problem can
Mm.
be super helpful. So do
Well,
you
yeah, I wrote about that last week. I call it the land of never before. But I just will preface it by saying that all those Google, like all the results for creativity and stress reduction are really lovely. And also in the beginning, if you haven't done it for a while, you probably will get frustrated and you'll probably think that you just want to stab your own eyeballs out. Like that's a very normal response as well, because I think it's very important. To remind ourselves or not to set up the expectation that like, oh, Jane said drawing's great and I'm going to draw this bird. And now I'm like, oh, look at my bird. Like that's just like that you're going to step into this like euphoric place. It's like you have to allow yourself the deconditioning actually to sort of get to the play zone, which is this ironic situation that we're in as adults. But I want to say that because it's there is challenge within it as well. But we're really talking about the unblocking of a funnel of energy that's already inside you, and that can go in lots of different directions. Um,
and I will
yeah, so
I
sorry.
just want to say there were things that came up when I Googled it that was like, oh, it can also cause stress when we are really focused on the outcome being perfect or something like
Yes,
that. So, yes.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, so the land of never before is the place that you go to where ideas are free to find you. And so you might be walking the dog or having a shower, and like that solution comes in, or you have that really great line that's the perfect line to the conversation you've been wanting to have with someone. And the reason for that is on a neurological level, or there are two things. Anything you do with the hands is very organizing to this part of the brain called the basal ganglia. And the basal ganglia gets very disorganized in trauma, which is why you'll find like a lot of people knit or a lot of people do like repetitive action with their hands as a way to deal with fragmented emotions and trauma responses that are coming up because it's actually organizing. Your hands and your brain have your hands have a huge amount of sensory and motor neurons in them, and they do actually organize your brain. So anything that's involved to like repetitive organized action of the hands is positive as far as like brain development and processing. Um, the other thing is that and this is the thing for me, like it's sort of it depends conversation, because for me, I could identify strongly as being a writer. However, writing was something that I did and therefore didn't have the same expansive experience in some instances as drawing, because drawing was new. So, for instance, if I got stuck in writing, it would be easy for me to fall into a rut, because my brain would travel down a familiar path of either telling myself a story or getting stuck in a familiar way. And I wrote about this last week. It's kind of like the connections in the brain become predictable. So it's, I said, like, you say cat, I say dog. Like those two things get paired together and we're like cat, dog, and we're trying to get to ostrich. So actually, we need to step outside that in order to get to somewhere new. So when you can get into those places that are involved to accessing the creative part of your brain, what is required in that space is your brain is always operating with a certain amount of white noise. And so that white noise is a necessary part of healthy brain functioning. And things churn through the white noise. So if we have a tightness in our brain, this is like Steve Peters would pull me up here and so would Chantel. There's no such thing as this, but if you have a tightness in your brain, such as a stuck problem or a thing you're getting concerned about, and you keep trying to push through, you're trying to find the answer in the same part of your brain that's experiencing the problem. And what you need to do is offer the problem to the rest of your brain, which is like, we're free. This is what we're here for. And just like move away from it and do something that has a soft activity to it. So that's why when you're in the shower, when you go for a walk and there's atmospheric things happening around you, but they're not demanding on you in some way. What your brain is doing is being aware of the problem and throwing it through your brain space like a spin cycle. And then you're available for the idea, which then just seems to like come out of the blue. But actually, on an unconscious level, we've been processing this behind the scenes. And we consider this relevant all the time for those of us that are familiar with horses. Like we call it soak time. Like that's why the next day it might be better. Like there's a part of the brain that's consistently working on the thing that's just being presented. But you have to step outside the usual model of working to be able to access that. So yes, it's a cogitating space. I've lost the question, and again, I ramble on. So feel free to
No
like just
questions here. There's only words.
a
So,
loud record over the top of me.
I think I have shared this story before, but it's in reference to what you're saying, is that when I was first learning, I had gone to this Kyle Cease Evolving Out Loud event that was really great. And he was talking about ways to meditate, because not everyone likes to meditate in the same way. And he said that he puts a notepad down next to him and with a pen. And then he starts meditating. And then because as soon as you start to quiet the mind, all these things that were bouncing around start yelling at you or running to the front of the room and going, hey, did you send the tax bill in? Or crap, did you never called your brother back? So what you want to do is just open your eyes and write it down, write it down, write it down. So you're getting it out of your brain and on the paper, which gives your brain a lot of space then. And so I was doing that. And then kind of further into the meditation, all of a sudden, this whole completely formed solution to a problem that I hadn't consciously thought about. And I can't tell you how long. Like this was not something I was conscious, just flew to the front. And I opened my eyes because I was so shocked. And I laughed because I was like, that is so bizarre to think that there was a part, the little minions in my brain in the background were working this out without my knowledge all this time. And they're like, finally, she's quiet. Hurry up, run up there and hear what we found. And that was really eye-opening for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of it like USB ports. Like you've got say you have like an allocation of 20 different USB ports in your brain, and they're ports that are available for things to land, like ports that are available for you to be found. That's the way I think of it. But there has to be free ports. And what clogs the free ports are things that are demanding of our attention, like social media. Like if you're constantly filling your brain, even if it's not intentional, with a stream of information, it requires processing on one level. And so maybe like 10 of those ports are already taken with the scroll. And then, you've got some kind of argument that you're having, or there's a narrative that you're telling yourself, and five more ports are taken. And so the more we can be available for things, the more we can. And this doesn't mean like being really militant with your day and never going on social media, but it does mean just being a little discerning about what you're allowing to capture your sensory attention. You'll notice that you open up ports, and then creation is happening. You are that. It's, you'll get ideas, you'll get inspirations, you'll get desires, and then you are just needing to follow them. Basically, that's kind of the whole the next stage of the skill. Yeah, but it's very beautiful. This just might not be appropriate. I wrote a like illustrated essay that showed some of my drawings at the beginning to the end, if that would be a cool thing to show. Because sometimes I think people don't believe you. And the other thing is that I don't have the worst of them because they weren't photographable. Like I wasn't going, oh, like great bird. So I don't have like them right back from the beginning, but I could show you a little progression about what I'm talking about if that's useful.
Yeah. Do you want to do it here? Do you want to put it on
I
the,
can, yeah, I can pull it up.
yeah, let me see. I made you co-host, so you should be able to.
I love being co-host.
She's taken over.
Such a
I have
power trip.
no power to
Yeah,
over now.
nothing. There's
Run
nothing
off
you
the
can do.
rails for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna block Christine and we're just gonna take it from here. So well, let me see. I don't know. I could regret this, but we'll. Oh no, it's down here, isn't it? Share.
A couple other things that I found online about the positive effects of dabbling in your creativity, deepening into your creativity, was an increased sense of purpose, which also
Mm,
relays itself into a greater sense of well-being. And then there's social benefits because there's groups that you can be more involved with. There is, art is a bid for connection with other people. It's like, this is my interpretation of something, and then other people get to feel into what you created. And
yeah.
it's beautiful in that way. So yeah, I was just saying that while you were looking for your
Yeah, no, we're here. We'll only do this for a minute. I just think it might be.
please. I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to look at your terrible
I
drawings.
know. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
Yeah, so I've been letting myself make these illustrated essays. So it's been a bit of an adventure in drawing and then figuring out how to digitize things. So you have to bear with me. But I just in this week's essay decided to. This was me. See, no art supplies to be seen in there. This was the extent of my drawing experience before. Um,
But
and
that's
then
better than I probably could do right now. So I don't know. Like those stick figures are
we can
that is
we
high
can
art for stick figures.
we can start here. We can start here. Um, so I will just scroll down. These are um, all my drawings. And this is my book of allies that I draw in every morning. So I like draw and then I write around them. You can I can send you this link after if you want to look at it. But why I'm scrolling down was I started just with drawing patterns. And these are just little crosses. And I was like, oh, the crosses kind of look like murmurations. Like, and I was making loads of little murmurations on my paper. And then I would start to look at patterns in nature and I would make patterns of things that I saw around me. And patterns liberated me. I made patterns, 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 so many patterns. And when I when I started to make the patterns, I started to see things differently. And that was really the gateway drug for me to draw. I thought, oh, actually, as someone that does have I like certain aesthetics, when I was managing to create them, I thought, oh, that's actually, I really like that. That's cool. And it sort of like perpetuated itself. And then I decided that I wanted to go into color. So this was my first, one of my first Cariaria, that's a New Zealand falcon. And this is something called blind contour drawing. So you do it without actually looking at your page. But what I found was that when I started to train myself to see rather than to draw what I thought they should look like, even though this little bird is obviously not accurate, there's an energy to them that I preferred to me trying really hard. And this was, you can see there's like a bluntness to the lines. There's no real definition. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just to show kind of progression. So this was at the start of last year. And then I was like,
That's
okay,
really good still. That's a really
well,
good start.
there was a lot before this, but I mean, in terms of crappy drawings, but of course, nobody who's taking photos of those, not me. So then I started to figure out, all right, like how do we get to shading? I can see that shading is a thing that people do, and so I was attempting to do that with this rather stern-looking eagle. And then this is a recent one. This is from this year with pen. So this, I mean, October, November, this is only like 3 months between these two things. So it's not very far. And it's also about finding things that you love to work with. Like I found a fine point pen that just was my thing. And allowing yourself to move through different materials and things. I mean, I'm talking about visual art, but this can be anything. Like you can garden, you can draw in different ways. This I saw him riding the other day, and I wanted to draw him. So that is a kahu or a swamp harrier that we have in New Zealand. And this is Waka Waka or a fantail. They're considered to be spiritual messengers. Don't they look like little spiritual messages?
Yes, they do.
And there's me, God, let's keep going from that. And anyway, this was just all about the stories that you tell yourself because I told myself that I couldn't draw. And now I'm doing less writing and more drawing. So I wanted to put that out because last week I had someone say to me, oh, but it's different for you because you can draw. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's like what we say, isn't it? It's always
Yeah,
different.
always different. Well, it's funny because that's kind of part of the reason why I tell people some of my history is because a lot of times they feel like, well, the things that they have to overcome are so great and other people couldn't understand. So
Totally.
I
Yeah.
do have walked through the valley of the shadow of death. I can say that I made it to the other side and that you can too. And I just text someone to bring me what I didn't even think of is some of my hilarious paintings or drawings, um, just to share. And that we're clearly having a beautiful show and tell. If anyone else wants to do
Yeah.
show and tell and has something that they made that they want to share, and I encourage you to bring the worst stuff that you have because that's the best stuff to look
I
at.
agree. Yeah. I'll also say that like I think it's easy to look at anyone and think about them having an ideal life. Like I have a really chaotic life. Like both of my boy, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I've got neurodiverse children, meltdowns, homeschooling, like chaos. It's chaos. Sometimes I just want to pull my hair out. I'm trying to work and there's 20 people that's come in and pulled me out. And my friend Joelle, that most of you will know, Joelle Dunlap, came and stayed amazingly a couple of months ago. And I was drawing and there was like Lego being thrown across the table and there was arguments. And she said, this is what you should be videoing. She said, because people think you're doing this in this like little container of like Zen. And I'm like, And I think that one of the things that creativity allows is that that could be a limitation for me. And it is a limitation, believe me. I think I could be running the country. I like didn't have children. But not to say I don't love them. But the thing about it is that the language part of my brain is very difficult for me to access in that space. I can't sit and write in amongst that. It's too, I just, I can't get, I can draw though. I can draw through earthquakes and hurricanes and arguments. And for some reason, that part of my brain doesn't get affected. And so I could say, oh, this isn't fair. I can't write. I can't do my writing. And I have had that tantrum several times. But actually what it's pushed me into is a different part of myself. And so one of the really big messages, just while everyone's getting their crappy drawings together or brilliant drawings together, is I cling with all my might to my creativity. Like really, like my life depends on it. And there is no part of my life that allows for it. Like I don't have time. I'm the breadwinner. It's interrupted. It's nutty. Like a video I made the other day that went on that page with the essay that I just showed you, like halfway through my children burst in with like blood nose, like, ah, like I just stopped. So when you see the cut in that video, I just dealt with like carnage and tears and a meltdown. And then I said to Giles, I don't think I can finish this video. And he's like, no, let's finish it. And I'm like, and anyway, but when I'm drawing, like, so it's, I share that because I think we develop this idea about like, I don't know, circumstances that are different for other people. And for me, it's not. So back to that question, back to that original thread. My greatest fear, and I've seen this in my own family, is getting to the end of my life and not having done what I want to do. And I don't mean that like taking over the world. I just mean like I do want to draw and I do want to write a book. And I could be one of those women that doesn't. I could be one of those women that went, gosh, she was so creative, but she just never had time. You know, she never had time, or gosh, you know, if her family wasn't asking so much of her, she could have written an amazing book like that. We see examples of this all of the time, and it breaks my heart. And it's real, that like it's genuinely real. Like I have a couple of times in my darkest moments where the martyr part of me comes up, which I also recognize from childhood. And I think, okay, I can't. Let's just cut this part of my life out because this is too hard. Like this is too hard. I've got enough to do without beating myself up or feeling crap about that I haven't had time to do these things. And then I think I know that that's basically like emotional suicide for me. That there'll be a death that I experience as a result of that. And so just to say that you might have to claw your way towards this, but there is a momentum that gets created, and then you develop the skill to be able to access it in circumstances that like seem impossible. And there was a beautiful quote I read recently, and I can't remember what her name is. She's very famous, but she's like, the conditions will always be impossible, was basically what she said. If you have a desire to do something, do it now. And that really struck me. I was like, it's always going to be impossible. So I might as well just start. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think about too is this is a bizarre anxiety that has just happened recently, because I think I have been trying to write a book for, I mean, I remember I was meeting a friend at coffee. We would meet like once a week to work on writing a book. And that was probably 15 years ago. You know, and so now the anxiety piece is kind of related to that has come up, which is what's going to happen is that by the time you write the book, no one's going to care about what you have to say anyway, because you know why? Because you're going to be an older woman, and nobody really listens to older women anymore, do they? Right? That reflection of the fear of, it's not a fear of being older, it's a fear of being invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that has been something that came up surprisingly for me, because it wasn't something that I was consciously thinking. It just obviously it's something that messages that I've been getting my whole life that were lying dormant again, and then just suddenly
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah. What I think in relationship to that is maybe it's true. What if we do create that thing and no one reads it or no one sees it or no one actions it? That might be true because we're not entitled success on the other side. We're not entitled people to take notice of our work. But I think what we're really afraid of and what the worst thing is to be invisible to yourself. Like to have that desire and to not have action. That is actually the worst. Like I can't control other people taking notice of my stuff. I can't control a book getting published or anyone reading my blog but when I deny myself that, I struggle to go to sleep with myself at night because I think, oh, you did it again. You didn't even try. Like, and that's the shame. That's the biggest part. I think that's the part that's hard to live with. At least if you're like, I put it out there and did my best and isn't she beautiful? Because the gift of creating is who you become on the other side of doing the thing. So if you write the book, yeah.
All I was going to say was that I think that there's all kinds of different reasons why someone would create, right? Especially a book.
Yeah.
And I think about, I'm looking at you and your process and everything that you have done and all that you have to share. And I think when you were talking about living your fully actualized life, like not doing that, that's the fear of getting to the end of my life. And if we look at it like we're all here also to lift each other up, right? To give each other permission, to acknowledge each other, to as humans. The piece of that for me, the fear in that is that a lot of things were created in this life for me to go through, for my kids to go through, for my family to go through. And part of the evolution of that at this point is that I have been given the opportunity to work with people and have all of that have a greater meaning in
Mhm.
that space. So the concern about did you wait too long is attached to this. You were given, like, this was your calling, your dharma, your whatever, and not wanting, procrastination, fear, other stupid things that I'll never even remember why I didn't do it. Like I don't remember why a year ago I didn't sit down and do something. So whereas it could have meant something to somebody else, right? In their life, not somebody that I would ever even meet, right? Half the people that their works have changed my life, I've never met them. They don't know me. They don't know anything about me.
Mm.
So I think about that piece of it, not from a standpoint of a pressure on myself, but more of just that would be the thing on my deathbed that would feel like there was, I didn't I didn't mine everything that could have been mined out
Mm.
of
Mhm.
what I was given.
Yeah. I mean, that's a creative energy in and of itself, isn't it? The message of that, the thought of that. Um, I think, not that you're asking for, this is unsolicited, so I'm just pinging back and forth with you. It's different to create and just create for creation's sake, which is great. compared to public facing creation. And we do have a vulnerability economy at the moment that thrives on people's vulnerability and encourages it and doesn't hold it very well on the other side. And I think that as creators who are really embodying the process, and you're sharing something that you're speaking to, which is so deeply personal and so deeply intertwined with your own neurology, you have to have reconciled all of those parts of yourself before you send them out in the world, because you have to hold yourself on the other side of that. And probably it just hasn't been the time. You've had the story, but you haven't had the skill to hold yourself in the story and be okay with all of the different ways it becomes someone else's story on the other side of that. So when you release it into the world, it's no longer in your control, and you have to be able to hold yourself in the midst of projections and questions and imaginations. And that's half of the work. And I don't think we're ready for that necessarily when the story's ready. So maybe it's just been an alchemy of that place. I mean, even to think that at the summit, you shared it publicly for the first time. Your book wasn't ready before you could do that.
That's, I also I look at the books that I love that other people have written. But what I've realized is that I'm not willing to tell everything that also in that dragnet pulls other people into it. And now I am controlling the narrative of aspects of their life. And a lot of the people in any book that I would write, a lot of them are not here anymore. So that I'm kind of eased of that responsibility, but some of them are. And the other, so that's one thing, one pin that I think was a confusion in my mind that I didn't really realize. Sometimes, like you just confused, or like it's heavy to start something. And I realized like that was part of it for me. I had to get clear about what I'm willing to write, and what I'm not willing to write. And the other thing is that what I've done, I was coached on this idea of, there's so many of these stories, and it made me, when you said about your time when you were doing the work like in Africa and all that stuff, like where it almost feels like another lifetime, like who was that person? A lot of these stories feel that way for me, and I'm remembering them more, and I'm just writing them as a little capsule, right? Oh, that time that this happened, right? And I'll title it, and then I'll just write what happened in that moment. And what I'm finding, which has really been surprising, is that I'm re-experiencing what happened, but I am a completely different person. And it's been bizarre because I feel like I'm on this seesaw where I have the view of it from when it happened, and the young woman that I was then experiencing it. And I can remember how I had framed it and how I saw it. And then there's this me looking at it going, oh, that's bullshit, or that was horrible. That was really horrible. Or, like there's you were so young. Like these people were adults. And so there's a lot of, I think, processing happening in that. And I think you're right. I don't think that I was ready at all before right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It can't be a process of sacrifice. You can't sacrifice yourself for the work. And I don't mean like that, obviously there's sacrifice of time and things, but I mean, for you to really suffer on the other side of that is not worth it. It's generative. It has to be uplifting for everyone involved. There's a vulnerability to it as well. But if you share too early and you're not on the other side of the story enough, this is where we see like the Sinead O'Connors of the world and the people that really stand up for things that matter just being taken out, and you're without wanting to seem dramatic, it's not worth it. It's not worth it that we get to choose the time, and the time sometimes chooses us. And when we're pushed into it with the vultures of the system that some people are thrown into without that choice, like the music industry or even the literary industry, if something kind of takes off early, you need safeguards around you, because the world is a nervous system shredder right now. And to send anything out into the world of a creative sort is hugely admirable and also really hard. Um, so I think that it's actually perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for helping me through that, because this has really helped clarify that big picture for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, like, look, if nobody reads it, nobody reads it. It wasn't so much about that as, when it was really about that. But really, you know, there was, all right, so now I'm really gonna share something I don't think I've shared. Uh, so if anybody on here doesn't know, there was a chapter in my life that was very, very tumultuous. And I ended up um, in a lot of trouble with the law and in jail awaiting trial. And I would make deals, as you do with God, with universe. If I get out of here, I'm really going to work hard to help other people in this situation, because at the time, and I'm not up to speed on this, I think this still exists, but during Reagan's presidency in the US, in the war on drugs, they created minimum mandatory sentences. And what minimum mandatory sentences did is it took the power out of judges' hands to decide what amount of time the person in front of them should get based on their history, based on the circumstances. And it said, if guilty of this, minimum 10 years. If guilty of this, minimum 10 years. And there was a lot of women, especially Hispanic women, in with me in the federal group that I was in, who their husbands were, dealing drugs in some way, and they were charged with one count of conspiracy, which means that we believe you knew your husband was operating in this drug business and you didn't turn him in. So therefore, conspiracy, which carries a mandatory minimum of 10 years. And these women are losing their children. They're losing, like this is really horrible. And so I was making these deals in my mind. If I get out of here, this is what one thing that I'll do. And when I got out of there, I couldn't. I could not be in any space to deal with courtrooms or prison or judges or anything to do with that. It was suffocating, and I wasn't far enough away from it to be able to feel like I could step into that in any way that didn't just crush me. And I mean, I had some little job at my first job, I think, was at Fashion Bug, which was like this horrible, if anyone remembers Fashion Bug, it was this awful store with like, oh my God, oh, so bad. It was such a bad job. But like I went to lunch at the lunch place next door, and like a bunch of agents came in to like ask me questions at like, so I wasn't like away from it yet. And this is after I got out. This is after all of that. So I think that has been weighing on me, of this idea of, I'm so grateful that I got another chance, that I did get that gift, and I do want to pay it forward in as many ways as I can. And I think part of that is attached to, if I had to go through this, if I lived through this, then there's a reason I lived through it, and let me share that. Let me share anything that anyone can use. I mean, not everyone can. I mean, not everyone cares, but to the people who that would matter to, I'm hoping to be able to get it in out there in whatever way that happens.
Yeah. Well, you didn't make a deal with God on the time frame. You went like within 12 months. So like I think you
True.
can.
Thank you, Jane. My lawyer, Jane Pike, is here at the pearly gates with me right now. And
Back
she
the
would like
track up a little bit and give us some time on this one. Yeah. You know, there's a funny thing around purpose as well. I've been thinking this a lot. Like we can put a lot of pressure. Like I love your story and I believe you, and I feel like it's a lot of pressure.
yeah.
Like it's a lot of pressure that you might sit there and be deer frozen in the headlights rather than like Christine liberated by this story. And I wonder about purpose because I was sitting in I'm looking at Bridget here. I told you this story already, but I was sitting in a cafe, the Eco Sanctuary next door, and I was drawing, and it turns out drawing is fascinating in public. People like walk past and they're like looking at your page, and what was really interesting and beautiful was I had a family sitting next to me and I could hear them talking about me. It was like the grandmother and her children, and they were going, "Look at the fine lines. Maybe she's an architect." Like they were talking like this, and I was like, "This is hilarious." And she said, "Could I bring my granddaughter over and look over your shoulder at what you're drawing?" And I was drawing a kingfisher. And I said, "Yeah, of course." And so the little girl came over and then she sat next to me at the table and they were all like, "Oh, sorry, gosh." And I'm like, "No, no, it's fine." And so I gave her a paper and pen and I said, "Do you want to draw, what would you like to draw?" And she said, "Maybe a penguin." And so never losing the chance to like educate on endangered species, I was like, "Well, the yellow-eyed penguin in New Zealand and rah, rah, rah." And we were talking and I thought this is how you spread information, right, to people that are interested. And her name was Penelope, so she liked the penguin and Penelope, and so that was cool. And I thought, what if she grows up and is like a world famous naturalist or conservationist based like, and I'm not saying that, but I have no idea about, I don't know her. She's going to go off into the world, and maybe my singular purpose was to sit in this cafe at this moment in time and just share something that I loved. And I wonder, like, with part of the pressure of the book, if you could release it and still write it, but release it, like with everything that you've shared, there is like a domino effect that is way out of your control of people that will talk to talk to talk to talk to talk. And you probably, in so many ways, have already fulfilled so much of what you wanted to by just being yourself and getting to the point that you are and already sharing the story that you have. Like I think that there isn't a singular activity. The potency is in you. Um, And that purpose has been in process of being realized ever since you stepped out of jail. It's not the book. The book will be lovely and fantastic. It will be a part of it. But your purpose is being how you've raised your own children. You've got a like just all of this is still beyond what we could possibly know, um, is my belief.
Thank you. Again, just send me an invoice for this, okay? I even when I was bartending at music venues in Los Angeles, there's an organization here that, is it Music Cares? It might be Music Cares. They bring instruments into jails and prisons and teach music. And when I hear about that, like every time I hear about stuff like this, I think I have this like little guilty ping of like, you know, and back then it was like nobody even knows about what happened. I had known those people for over 10 years. Nobody knew anything about that time. So yeah, I think that releasing that's I mean, that's so much of, I feel like our evolution is the continuous never-ending process of bringing what hides in the dark into the light, bringing what's operating in the background into the consciousness so that you can look at it and decide, do I want to keep this? Do I want to alter this? Do I want to, move this out? So this has been very helpful, Jane.
Good. Yay.
I'm still waiting on my terrible drawings. I don't know.
I know.
Oh, he left them on the table right outside the door. Hold on, let me grab.
There's also, I believe, because I've been going to a few art workshops and things lately, and I've been going and you show up and there's a lot of people that have been to art school there, which I have a tremendous amount of respect for. But there is, if that sort of like limited you, I notice that I'm actually more creatively free than the art school students. And they all go, gosh, you're so like experimental. And I think, am I? It's just because I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just like, and it's they've been trained within now a creative thing to think in a specific way. And there's now that same stuff that comes up for all of us in different parts. So you can liberate yourself from that as well, if that's one of the things that hold
It's
you
funny.
back.
I also hear people who used to be good at something, right? Like I used to be really good at painting, or I used to be good at drawing, or music, or whatever. They can be the hardest because it's such a hard thing for them to start new again at something that they were once pretty proficient at.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's my lead in to show you my painting, because when I was in school, in high school, my art teacher wanted me to go to art school. I loved art. I loved painting and drawing, and but then it's so funny because it reminds me of what you said about the guidance counselor and the list of jobs. And I remember going, like, really being excited about the possibility of going to art school, and then they told me what the jobs would be, and they didn't sound like anything I wanted to do. Like they sounded like droll pressure content, like uh, what is the term for when you're doing it for like commercial purposes?
You can be a janitor, an
Yeah.
art room assistant, a bench cleaner, or a paint pot stirrer. I was going to say a pot stirrer, but maybe we need context in given the conversation we've had.
It didn't sound like what we were doing,
Yeah.
at the time. So anyway, years later, when I was probably in my late 30s, I got someone gave me an easel and paint supplies to start, and my whole goal is to just play with it. But this painting has been like a family, but it's just a very basic. But I was like, I'm just
Get
gonna.
on with showing us the painting, Christine. Start with all of this preface.
Okay.
Let's do this. Oh, I love it. Wait, I have to spotlight you. I'm going to spotlight you for everyone.
Okay. All right. Uh,
No, that's so fun.
you like my little crabby? I got
I
my little
love it.
crab, and we got flip-flops, right? We have there's yeah, it's very, very basic. But that was the first thing I painted. Because I just wanted to
Great.
play. I just wanted to play with it.
Actually, I'm gonna share.
Oh boy, here we go.
I haven't got well, no, I'm gonna. So the reason that I wanted to write outside of like all of my work stuff was basically to save the world in a really embarrassing way. But actually, I'm a really big conservationist. Like my birds, the environment, it's just
The
huge to
frog.
me.
Don't forget the
I
frog.
wanted to. yeah, the frogs. And I just wanted to contribute to that awareness because in a way that was moving, because I saw all of the conversations and they just were so boring. I'm like, this is not going to inspire someone that doesn't care to care. Like giving me the stats is like, I'm just, or I care and I'm bored. Like it's so I was trying to think about different ways of having that conversation. And there's a really beautiful quote from someone who is a now friend called Ruth Allen, and she writes that your contribution needs to suit your character. And
Oh,
I think of that
I
all
hear.
of the time. I think the way that you show up in the world needs to suit how you are and who you are. And so when we think about activism, for instance, I think of art as activism, but the activism can be just the embodiment of being yourself in a world that's trying to tell you that you shouldn't be. And it can be marching in the streets, and it can be doing this thing. So anyway, just as a why that matters was I've been thinking about that, and also like the same sort of pressure that you were talking about, Christine. I thought, okay, how do I do this? And in this little like serendipitous way, a new art friend of mine actually is a volunteer for our seals on the coast. So they come in and they have their babies and they help. They're endangered, so there's lots of different things that are involved to looking after them. And they've been getting a lot of abuse recently from dog walkers because the dogs are supposed to be on the lead, and people think that they live there and my dog's different and they can roam on the dunes and you won't tell me when to put my dog on the lead. And so there's been a couple of volunteers that I know that don't want to volunteer anymore because they were scared about the abuse that they were getting, and that made me sad. So I thought, well, I was drawing a picture for them. They didn't know. I thought I'm going to draw a seal and I'm just going to say thank you, because maybe not enough people say thank you. You hear all the like loud voices, and I don't get to volunteer because I don't have that as possible at the moment. So I'm going to say thank you to the people that do, because I'm really grateful. And then she messaged me out of the blue and said, we're doing a fundraiser for the Sea Lion Foundation. Could you donate anything? And I thought, I could maybe like donate a drawing. Like, is that like a crazy idea? And I started drawing, and now I'm going to donate this other drawing, which is the first thing. I've got all my gremlins coming up, but the first thing I've ever done that maybe they'll make $5. But I'll show you my little sea lion. I started playing with him yesterday. I don't know if you can see
I
him.
think I can unpin myself. I think that's what I need to do.
Can you
There
see him?
we go. Yes.
So I'm going to he's obviously split in a sketchbook. So that won't work. So I have to redraw him again, which is fun. But I guess it's just my little story is a way of saying like you don't know how things are going to find you. And I always thought that would be through words, and through drawing is like really left field. So you can hold the intention with the, we know Kathy's saying intention, attention, no tension. Um, but maybe the way that you contribute will be different to what you expect.
Hmm.
And you have to be willing for it to be different, I guess. Yeah.
But you know what's so beautiful about that too? So I've known you to be very much a conservationist and very, at in tune with nature and caring about what's happening, and and then you followed your intuition and your calling towards your creativity to do art. Not with I'm going to help the environment with art, but you just organically followed that. And then how beautiful that the two then had a place to meet.
Yeah, I think that was always the case. I just never knew that. That's why
Yeah.
it's like we have to let ourselves follow the glimmers. Because a year ago, honestly, like I keep saying this, and I just want to keep saying it because I know that people don't necessarily believe you when you show something that looks different to what they imagine. Like I was really shit. Like I was really shit at this. And I'm going to tell you something funny. To remove the gatekeeping, I actually bought the URL yesterday, shittybirds.com. And my idea around shittybirds.com was a joke in the beginning where I was like, imagine if I just started a website and I posted all my shitty birds on there. Like that was my aim. And yesterday I was thinking maybe we need a drawing club that like is a sketchbook club for people who want to sketch but don't. And if we just call it shitty birds, you're coming in like with this expectation that like just whatever. It's that we don't have this idea about something being something. And the funny part, apart from shitty birds, and I'm also sitting on that because I'm like, well, people take that the wrong way. Is I tried to buy crappy birds. I thought maybe crappy is like less like pointy than shitty. Crappy Birds was a premium URL, $5,500 US to buy that. I was like, well, here we go.
Birds.
Shitty birds it is. So,
Oh my God, I love that. But it what it reminds me of I is so I just listened to recently writer, director, filmmaker Robert Rodriguez was on Tim Ferriss's podcast. And if you want to be inspired, I would give that a listen. I mean, the reason being, if you don't know who he is, he did films like From Dusk Till Dawn, Sin City. He did all the Spy Kids movies, Desperado. He's done a lot of movies, but it's his origin story that is the like that Cinderella story from Hollywood, where he was the whole thing was he was a film student and he wanted to make a movie and he wanted to finance the movie. He needed to finance the movie himself. So he literally was like donating his body to like medical experimentations and taking drugs that they were getting ready for the market to in order to get the money together. Everything he did was what people told you, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because this is the movie I make that's my practice movie. I want to be able to play with whatever. I want to be able to try anything because it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to like have people see this. The goal is to like maybe sell it. He made it in Spanish because the idea was the Spanish market was so desperate for content that if he made the film in Spanish, he could probably get his money back by just selling it, even if it was a crappy film, right? And what was amazing because of all of that is that he made a mini masterpiece. Like he made a masterpiece in it. And he won Sundance, he got agents, he just took off. But what he talks about is that what we do as humans is we think that we can think our way through a creative process ahead of time. And we can sit on the couch and we can put it all together. And he's like, that's not how creativity works. It's not how life works, but it's definitely not how creativity works. You have to do. You just start doing. You just do. And then the
it's
next thing
clever.
comes up, and then you do that. And the next thing comes up. And if you, whatever you sat on the couch writing about, that none of that is even applicable after like the first two actions that you take because you realize that none of that is actually how this is going to go. So his whole thing is, I don't wait for permission. I don't wait for someone to tell me that it's okay. He's like, I wanted to learn how to edit. So I edited my own thing. I went to learn how to be the DP, director of photography, how to run the camera. He said I wanted to be able to do everything so that I could do it. And I didn't have training. And people say, well, you can't do that because you don't have the training, or you're going to piss people off because you're doing things that other people. It's like, but it's my movie. I'm playing with it. I want to be able to do this. So it's so much more than that, but it's super inspiring, even the way he raises his children. And so if you were interested, it's really, really something that you just go, wow. And that's what made me think about you with the drawing. Like maybe you didn't see how it came together, but then it does come together. And every time we take action, we tell the universe we're in the game. So it can send other things to us that we couldn't have thought sitting on the couch on our own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool. I had something in there to say, but it's gone out of my head.
I drove it out. Me and Robert Rodriguez drove that memory right out of your
Oh,
head.
it's come back. It's come around the roundabout. I I think as well, it's like a constant conversation, like that one of, well, for me, from my experience, maybe I'm an anomaly. So maybe you're all like, actually, we've got all this all sorted and you need to go somewhere for help with that. But like I'm liberated, and then I'm like, oh God, am I doing this right? Like, or is this not right? Like, it's a constant process of extraction. And even this last week, I mean, I wrote about it in the preface. I've decided for a few different reasons to speak about this in a big way, like creativity and the nervous system and the body in a way that's like more formal. That I want to sort of help people with it. And so now it becomes, instead of me just having this little creative adventure by myself over here, now it becomes more responsible feeling, because it's not just me sharing something with you, it's for a purpose between us, if that makes sense. And so what it gets loaded in a different way. And I started to read, this is a source of always possibility and demise when you start to read other people's work, depending on your capacity at the time. But I was reading some very intelligent, exceptional articles, essays about imagination and the nervous system and all those things. And references like, PhD, rah, 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 all this. And I thought, oh my God, like I have planned an illustrated essay this week, and I should be, what am I doing? Like, maybe I'm not taking, what if people think I'm not serious about this? I should be writing the deep, dense essay about the relationship between this and this. And I can do that. But I really wigged myself out. I was like, what if people think, what if, what if, what if, what if? And then I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Literally, this is my whole week. I am teaching people to believe in themselves and for creative liberation, to just do, excuse my French, whatever the fuck you want. Like, just fucking do it. Like, because the thing is, like, Glennon Doyle this week joined Substack and got a very poor reception from jealous people. And I thought it was such a moment of clarity for me. I was like, you can raise millions of dollars, you can help people, you can put good messages out in the world, and some people are going to shit on you anyway. So I thought, fuck it. Like, let's just do whatever we want, because you just can't win. Like, you literally can't win. And so that was amazing to me. And I thought, I'm just going to do these missives. I don't want to use that as the wrong word, but like however I want, because like if I'm feeling joyful when I create them, hopefully a little part of that gets picked up at the other end and is utilized in the right way. And I didn't get into this to become the same thing that I was before. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had the big wordy conversations. I get into the weeds. I want this to be like a different thing. And why I share that is because this is a process of constant renegotiation with yourself, of recognizing that pressure, because our world is pressure. There is pressure to become a product, to do it a certain way, to be serious, that you're going to get the flack from people who don't like what you do. And it's just an extraction process all of the time, I think. Yeah, rather than like, oh, now I'm liberated and therefore I shall create. It's like, no, it's like a whoop, whoop, whoop. It's like an accordion with your soul. Yeah.
So I was curious, two things. One is if anybody has any questions or anything that they want to share or ask, please raise your hand. Uh, the other thing, your proverbial hand, there's a hand that you can raise if you look at the bottom of your screen. The other thing is, Jane, if you had, I don't know, 3, 5 things, I don't know, what would you tell people that want to bring more creativity into their life? They have that yearning to do it, but they're not really sure where to begin.
Um, on a very boring, more practical note, um, most of us are exhausted. creative thought and expression will not be present if you're exhausted. Um, and there are a lot of us that are exhausted and wondering why we're not like feeling flush with life purpose. Um, so taking care of your basic needs in whatever way is possible is so essential, because at the bare bones of it, you are an animal body. And if that is depleted and we consider creativity to be life force, um, it's going to be tough. And I know that from experience, like of sleep deprivation over a very long time and caregiving demands. And the kind of paradox is that creative experience is generative of energy. So it's like this weird sort of difficult place we can get ourselves into of, for me now, drawing is like an hour's sleep. You know, it's like it's so rejuvenative that it feels refreshing for me to do that. And so I don't know, I can't tell you exactly how to balance those two things in your own life, but to say that if you're exhausted, we understand, and sleep is a cure for so many things that you might be telling yourself. But you might have to fight for your creative experience, and claw your way to it rather than like have it appear, and to just know that the conditions are impossible. They really are. They're impossible. There is no space in this world that we've created, this Western world, for creation. That's why funding to the arts gets cut as the first thing. It's seen as a luxury expense, a non-necessary thing. We know that's not true. And so to kind of claw your way towards it in whatever romantic way you can, I recommend. And also, if you don't know where to start, the simplest indication is when you go, oh, I love that, or oh, I'd love to be able to do that. Like just that, like that little thing of like, oh, like I loved botanical painting. I thought I'd love to be able to do that. And then I'd be like, that was it. But that's your first clue. And then you get to play. You get to play. Like I'm talking about visual arts, but it can be literally anything, that you're moved towards. And you also do have things you fall into. Like I tried lots of different visual expressions, and eventually I found just this little black fine point pen that is, I just love drawing with it. And when I do other things, I find myself missing that particular thing. And so you have to sometimes try a whole smorgasbord of stuff, and you're not going to love it all just because it's creative. I don't love everything just because it's creative. You get to have your own choice about what that is, of course. But to just, it's really just permission. You know, like we feel guilty, or we shouldn't be doing this, or you know, one way or the other. It's really the biggest part is just giving yourself permission to do something that might have no purpose beyond the experience of doing it itself. And there is very little in our lives that revolves around that, and that is the start point. It might not be the end point, but it's certainly the start point. And that permission to play is really powerful. When I sit down with my two little boys, they both have a strong perfectionist pattern as well. I don't know where they get that from. But Flynn is really good at cartoons, so he has this whole like cartoon sequence he will draw. Tommy, in comparison to both me and Flynn drawing, is like, I can't do it. And so I'm like, right, we're just going to get out massive bits of paper. And he just goes wild with like paint and pastels, and they're nothing. They're colors and shapes and they're abstractions and they're beautiful. But that's him, you know, like if I tried to make him go in between the lines, it would feel awful to him. So you have to, you know, for each three of us sitting at the table, there's a very different way we have the experience, and you have to let yourself find your own flow within that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter Lauren and I were talking about what it's like being in the modern world right now. And we have all of these things that are supposed to be fast and save us time. And I've never felt like I've had less time, because with knowledge comes more things like, oh, you should be getting 10 minutes of sunrise light every day. to get good that those light beams for your circadian rhythms, and then you should be drinking this much water, and then you should be doing this. There's so many things that we know now that it would be a full-time job just to care for your body every day. So I found that I need to really make a list of what the real priorities are. And if I don't get light in my eyeballs at 5:30 in the morning, I'm going to live. But the pressure that starts to build of not doing enough, not doing all the things, falling behind, it's this feeling of falling behind. That's so detrimental to my feeling of having well-being and being in the moment and being able to feel like I'm in my life. Sometimes I don't know if you get this, but sometimes all of a sudden I just have to stop and kind of like look around me and take in the environment, go outside, sit under a tree or something because I'm on the train. I'm on the train and I'm looking out the front window at where I'm going, and I have no idea where I am right now because that train's driving so fast. And that's not how life is experienced. It's not experienced in some future place. And so while we still have to do things like maybe, go to work or create or whatever it is, the things that we have to do, care for others, um, even though we may have to do those things, it doesn't mean that we don't ground into what's happening. Because right now, us talking right now, this is our life. We might not be here 5 minutes from now. We have no idea, right? This is our life right now. And so often I find the struggle is my brain wants to be in the next moment. It's what's next, or oh, don't forget about doing that thing. And so that's a constant practice of bringing myself back into this moment and all these great wonderful things of like biohacking and mindfulness and all of these things can actually become pressure of like I'm not doing enough of the things that I need to do.
Oh, how I despise the word biohacking, but yes. Like we're a system that you just attack with a machete.
Right, right. I will win this, buddy.
Yes, you will obey me. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Bridget's got her hand up. Come to the table.
Hello, darlings.
Hi.
Hi. So many things have been sparked, and so many of stuff is stuff I learned from Jane and in her creative group. But I was thinking about um, one book I really have liked is there's a book called it's by Jacob Norby, and it's called The Creative Cure. And one of the things that's happened for me recently is I've taken up um, leatherworking. And I've set up a little leather studio and I'm doing all this stuff. And I was really excited to show it to my dad, who's been a woodworker, tinker his whole life, makes little projects for himself, makes little projects for me whenever I need it. And, has redone his car and all these things. And one of the first things he said to me is, "Why are you doing all this? Are you going to sell stuff and make money?" And I deflated like right away. Until I realized, well, nobody would have said that to me if I had said, I'm taking this medication to make me feel better. I'm going to this therapy to help me feel better. And yet, that's exactly what this creative outlet has done. And I didn't want to kind of armor up against it, but it was just like an interesting observation that even then, somebody who I thought would be so happy because he tinkers and has never sold anything, he just does it because he loves it, was still kind of turned that way. And so the other thing that has been so helpful that I took from something Jane did is like, I try not to have just my stuff in one spot. Like if you're gonna step into being creative, like I've had pens and papers everywhere, pens and papers, and Charlie will probably kill me for sharing this. But we have a bathroom that desperately needs to be remodeled, and I wanted to just start writing on all the walls. And he's like, no, because we could be putting the house up for sale. And if the bathroom does. So we had this giant TV that we bought, and I took a huge piece of cardboard from the TV and I put it right next to the loo. And there's a giant assortment of watercolor pens. And now I wrote on the top of it, art can begin anywhere. And now we write on it whenever we're in the bathroom. And we just have stuff like everywhere. If you want to pick up a pen and write or draw, it's not put away. Like I took over the dining room, and the freedom of expression then has just come, it's just everywhere. And where I go and how I behave and how I feel out in the world has completely changed just from these small acts of little things. And I'm in the middle of doing a project right now with leather, and I'm learning my way through it. I can hear my grandmother say, you never cook a meal for the first time for strangers, but I'm doing this little project, and I'm learning how to dye leather. I'm learning how to tattoo leather with a tattoo gun. It's been hours and hours and hours of tedious work with little tiny micro paintbrushes and all of this stuff. And the other day I thought, oh my gosh, because I'm giving these things as gifts. What if they throw them all in the bin? What if I'm the joke at someone's dinner table? Like I had a moment of panic. And then I thought, none of that changes what's happening right now. I was having so much fun. I was frustrated at points of time, but I was enjoying the process of dye on my hands and learning what paint couldn't handle the lacquer and all the different things that if they end up the joke at someone's dinner table, none of that mattered to the process. But I couldn't have done that without a lot of other work that had happened beforehand. And so, first, I just want to thank both of you because you've been very inspirational in a lot of different creativity. I'm doing the same as you also, Christine, where little memories that have popped up a couple times are saying, I need to be put on paper. And so I'm writing memories out in blocks. If a memory has been offered to me more than twice, I know that it needs more ether than the space inside my own head. So I've been writing like that. And I just encourage everybody to do it because it's crazy how much it changes all the different parts of you. And I'm having so much fun. That's all.
I think that Jane has her first artwork for Shitty Birds. Just need to take a picture and send that
I know.
shitty piece of cardboard to Shitty Birds and say,
Oh,
yeah,
next.
so good. So good. Yeah.
Pictures of our bathroom. You don't mind that online, do you?
I have a shitty.
Shitty bathroom.
Literally.
I operate on the same principle of like, why are mobile phones so like addictive? And it's because there's very little friction between you and a phone. And so the thing is, if you want to establish something, you have to create as little friction as possible between you and the activity. So I'm like, if you want art to be in your life, you have to make it so obvious you trip over it. And so it's just everywhere. It's like my pencils, if I sit down, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'd love to do that, but God, I can't be bothered going and getting my book. And like, there's something there that's sort of able to spark, you can capture the moment, I guess. And the more you do that, the less you're on another device that, sucks your brain out of your body like some kind of dementor and actually gives you life in the opposite way. So that's so cool, Bridget. I love all of that. The other thing, just in terms of like people thinking things that aren't true because your leather work would never be thought of like that. But just before Christmas, I went to a friend's little pop-up shop and there were all these different artists that had put things in the shop. And I can't tell you the energetic relief that I felt walking into that room of seeing things that people had made. It was like they hadn't come from a factory. you could feel the people in the objects. And I thought, I am willing to spend money on these things. They're imperfect, and that just is what is making them so gorgeous. Like I wanted to buy everything in the shop, and everyone that came in felt different. And I think in the age of like AI and all of the stuff that's going around us, actually like handmade is so precious and so vitalizing that we're going to be more and more drawn to it, is my feeling. Yeah.
And I would say that I think that what was brought to light with what your dad had asked you around this is the very thing that we all carry that makes the idea of doing anything creative as something that you just do if you have extra time, because everything is about having a purpose. What is the purpose of this in the terms of bringing money in the door, food on the table? Um, and it was just such a great opportunity for you to really delineate that for yourself, that I no, I'm actually free of that pressure on what I'm doing. I'm doing this just for the joy of it. But your dad was like, he was the representation of that in, I think, in all of us.
Yeah. I've always gotten a little bit itchy around the term finding your purpose. And one of the things for me is like finding your purpose feels like you've lost something and you've got to like go through the muck and the mud and find something. And recently I did a class with Emily Cass' daughter, and she talked about remembering your intention. And as soon as I could fall back into, yes, this is like I was creative as a child, and someone told me, you're good with horses and your brother knows how to paint and draw. And I was good with horses, but that became the only focus. And I honestly feel like what I've falling back into is remembering, not a finding. Like I'm remembering who I was. I'm feeling it. Like it's so just, and I'm talk about shitty birds. Like I draw these trees. Like I'm not good at drawing. And part of leather working is having to draw like different things. And so I'm just finding patterns that I can take off the internet. There's tons of free stuff. And I I just feel like there's this comfort in like remembering my intention before if you want to get really woo, before I even chose to come here. But the finding felt so like a struggle, like I had to keep looking, and remembering has just brought me so much comfort and enjoyment in all of it.
And we have more than one. Like, I mean, look at Jane Pike. But we have more than one purpose, more than one calling, more than one like remembering or allowing or cultivating, right, aspects of ourselves. Jane, you did leave international speaker off of your bio. I just wanted to let you know that.
Gosh, thank you, Christine. That's embarrassing. Yeah, I'll be adding that in. Toot sweet.
Too sweet.
Charlie just went into the bathroom and took a picture of the shitty bird that he had drawn on
Oh,
the board.
Charlie's
Oh
Oh my
it.
God.
We're launching, everyone. It's in real time.
Perfect. I cannot believe that 2 hours have gone by. Like this conversation has been absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful that you agreed to come here and hang out with us, and I do want you to share with everybody, what are you offering? Because Bridget said that she was taking some courses with you. So what if people here, if anybody listening to this wants to have you be their guide into getting back into something that's creative, bringing that out, how would they do it?
Oh, thank you. Well, these are places I actually love. So I've got two creative strand possibilities, if you want to think about it like that. There's it's called a newsletter. I think of it like a little publication on a place called Substack. And that's where that story that I showed you, I send something like that out each week, along with little videos, and it's kind of a growing archive that talks about creative connections and life. And so at the moment, all of it, there's a lot of sort of free stuff there, but there's a $10 a month subscription that you can sign up to that gives you access to the paywall content, which will be getting more and more as you go through. And then what Bridget was referring to is I have a membership community called Creating Wild. It's all Creating Wild. There's just different like versions of it. So the Creating Wild membership is on a platform called Circle. And Circle, because everything moving forward, I don't want on social media. Basically, it just is like it cannibalizes creativity to my mind. So Circle is like a little closed membership community, but the interface of it sort of looks a little bit like Facebook. So it has a feed and we have different spaces in there that you can post in. And so there's a practice studio that people share their art and writing and whatever else. Honestly, anything goes in there. And we're starting out, well, there's a few in there already, but we're starting monthly workshops. There's a workshop next weekend called Drawn to Write, where we talk about accessing those different imaginative ecosystems to feed into each other, which I'm really excited to share. And there's weekly prompts in there and all of that stuff. So I'm happy to put the link. Is that weird to put the links or?
No.
Obviously, I can I'll share the links with you. Here we go. Let me
share the links. And then when I put this on YouTube, when I convert this, I will put those links in the comment or in the description.
Thank you. Actually, here's a page on my website that tells you about all the things that I do, free and otherwise. And then Creating Wild, the membership, is this one. And it's a really cool group of people in there. All of these are vaguely fledgling, but I don't know, I'm proud of them because I feel super passionate about this stuff. I really, really do. I think it's so, so important. And it's changed my life. I know you hear that all the time, but it really, really has changed my life. And so I'm like a zealot. I'm like a reformed, born again, like whatever, insert the thing of choice here. And yeah, I mean, either of those things might give you full access to Shitty Birds. So it's worth it. It's just for that inspiration.
Hey, just for Shitty Birds, it was worth it.
And that'll be the first like testimonial, worth it just for Shitty Birds. And, I'm looking forward to all of the cartoons I can draw to advertise Shitty Birds. Actually, my mind's been just going crazy with possibility. So yeah.
Got one some Shitty Bird merch ASAP.
I'm just worried because I love birds. I'm like, well, people think I'm like the anti-bird, but no, it's fine.
It'd be great in a cap because you would like think like you're trying to avoid the shitty birds by protecting your head.
So much. I think Tom's got his hand up patiently.
Tom, join us.
No, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We can.
Okay. Since Jane's talking about Substack, can I make a kind of a shameless plug for my own creativity?
Sure, go ahead.
So when we took off on our trip, I created Magic Mare Meanderings just to let people know where we were and what we were doing. And to my surprise, people said they enjoyed my writing. Well, recently I decided to branch out a little bit, having discovered Substack. And in January, I started letting my horse post on there. I posted on there on Warwick Schiller's, one of his sites, that I've gone beyond what Warwick can train horses, and I've trained my horse to read and write. And now she posts every morning. Brewha posts every morning, your Monday morning brew. And it's a pretty quick read. but basically just her thoughts. And it's just been fun to do that. And I've got a couple of people. It's really amazing. I don't know how many people follow, but every once in a while I see, oh, somebody else is following my Substack. And I've been getting some pretty good reviews about it.
Nice.
So,
That's exciting, Tom. Good for you.
so look for Tom Young at Tom here, Substack.
At Tom here. Okay, so just because there may actually be people that stumble upon this that do not know what that means. Tom's wife, Sonia, has a Facebook account that she never uses, but Tom does. And so they share it. And so, but Tom will say when he's going to comment on something or share something, Tom here. So we all know Tom as Tom here.
Yeah, at the first summit, Warwick called me out on it because I submitted a question that he liked. And it turned out that I was anonymously famous. And
Always the best way.
Yeah.
oh,
I don't know.
it has turned into lots of fun though. And one of the things that, if we have time here, I was going to say about people wondering if they should venture into their creativity is so many of everybody lives with some fear, and this could be part of it. And I say, give up your fear about doing something, give up the fear of being embarrassed, and just do it and embrace that embarrassment. Sometimes it's just so much fun to do things and being able to be free of being embarrassed. It's such a freeing thing. It started with me just never being embarrassed about what somebody else would do. And it's virtually impossible for me now to embarrass myself. So let that go, jump into your passion, let that creativity go and do things like letting your horse speak on Substack.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Right. It's like Stevie Dillahun's shirt that said, "But did you die?" I think we build things up to be so huge in our
A
head.
little bit.
No, yeah. I'm speaking for a friend. Like I've just heard of this, other people have this issue. So I've heard that it can feel that way until you do it. And then it's like, why did I wait so long?
There is an interesting thing as well. Like often I don't get the thoughts until after I've done it. And then I think, oh shit, did I just embarrass myself? Like I didn't even think of that in the lead up. And then I get like a rebound anxiety that I have to coach myself through, which I think comes with the expansion and having thrown yourself off the cliff and you're like, wait, did I have a parachute? Like I don't know that I just do that thing? And so that's definitely part of my impulsive nature.
One of the things that people should remember if they're part of the Warwick Schiller crowd, and if you aren't, maybe you should be, is that it's such a safe place. We can do this stuff. You're not going to get ostracized, or not that I've ever seen. Nobody's ever attacked anybody else for doing something silly.
You don't really know Chantel Pratt that well, so
you can explain the neurology of it.
Well, I will piggyback off that because actually Warwick's going to be my next guest.
Fun.
And I realize I'm not going to say right now what the topic's going to be on because I should probably clear it with him first. But now just surprise him, have him just be sitting there like blank face going, huh?
And just make sure you at least 2 or 3 times you go, well, actually, that's the opposite of what Jane said last week. She was
Let's pull up the tape. Roll the tape.
Yeah. Just can we get a replay on that? Like just yeah.
Yeah, save it. You guys
Oh,
friends anymore? I don't think so.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for having me here, though. I know I'm surprised that so many of you have sat through 2 hours of
I know. Us
it's so
rambling.
great.
2 hours of Jane Pike is wonderful.
Oh, thanks. My children wouldn't say that.
That's very true. Well,
Flynn at one of my retreats said, Mum, people seem to like you.
I love that. I don't get it. What's
Such a
happening?
shock.
Well,
Oh,
I am grateful you were here. I clearly am going to take away a lot from this conversation, and may not be the first time. I mean, may not be the first time. Clearly, my brain's so melted from all of the amazing things. May not be the last time that you're here. So,
yeah. Shitty Birds will be in my bio next time. You'll be like, Jane Pike is the founder of shittybirds.com and
it's taken
and
the
the merchandise range found in Target, Kmart, and Home Depot.
Stay tuned for Shitty Birds. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and
Thank you, everyone.
see you next time.
Thank you,
Bye.
ladies. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.